Now, coming back to our series, this, as someone noted, who has been with us many, many times, but I don't think is here this evening, that while I have given many talks on the Hymn of the Pearl before, this was the only one that was of such long duration. So this has been, and we concluded tonight, this has been sort of the most thorough treatment, perhaps, of the subject. And then we can go on to other things now. All right, that being the case, let's take a look at what the Hymn of the Pearl, or the Hymn of the Robe of Glory, as it has often been called, in its underlying intentionality, what it is all about and what it communicates to us. It has been a recognition, especially of the more insightful and more poetic souls throughout history, that we come from somewhere, that whoever we may be and whatever our calling in the world happens to be at that particular time, we have a mission of our own, and that this mission is mysterious, is mystical and transcendental, and it has very little to do with what profession or calling we may be following in our worldly career, because it is a mission that has to do with the innermost nature, the innermost essence, as I like to call it, of the human being. And so this, let's say, this has been recognized as a factor of life by many people throughout history. Maybe one of the nicest statements on this issue has come to us from the poet William Wordsworth, who wrote the following, and this could very well be an introduction to the story of the Hymn of the Pearl. The soul that rises with us, our life star, hath had elsewhere its setting and cometh from afar. Not in entire forgetfulness and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God who is our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. So let's say the recognition of the human soul having a background, and more than that, having in all likelihood its own mission, which in most instances is not recognized by other people, but which it is incumbent for the individual himself or herself to recognize, for the fulfillment of that mission would then really be the fulfillment of the purpose of our lives on earth, the recognition of the underlying intentionality why we came to this particular place. Now, very, very quickly, in a few words, recapitulating what we have been dealing with before, the Hymn of the Pearl, which is taken from a collection of scriptures probably going back to at least the 3rd and possibly the 2nd century, called the Acts of Thomas, which are not to be confused with the Gospel of Thomas, and which nevertheless are put into the poetic format of a tale that is told by the Apostle Didymus Judas Thomas, who was regarded as the spiritual twin of Jesus Christ when he was in India, where to he went. And it is the story of a soul that is sent from the transcendental, the heavenly realms, in order to, so it would seem, according to the text, to fulfill a particular mission. And that mission, which is obviously a symbolic statement, that mission is told to us under the symbolism of finding, discovering, and then making the return journey to heaven with a particular treasure, which he is to discover and liberate here on earth. And that this pleasure, and I don't want to get too graphic about it, but this pleasure is a pearl. And, I had a father-in-law who was a great collector of pearls and who lived in Japan for a long time and was friendly with the Mikimoto family, who are the creators of the what is the
cultured?
The cultured pearl, yeah, right. So the others are uncultured. In any event, the poetic story about the pearl being, it's useful to recall right now, because we are dealing with that particular act. The pearl is guarded in a body of water, in a large body of water, and is guarded by a monster. That's often the case in tales, in legendary, wherein some important treasure is guarded by a dragon. Dragons are particularly have the reputation of being partial to treasure, as we find already in the book The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, wherein Smaug, the dragon, and he was not named after the atmosphere of Los Angeles. It's not that kind of a Smaug. But Smaug has amassed, as some of you may recall, a tremendous amount of treasure which he has in his underground habitat. But even though he has it there and he sleeps on top of it, he doesn't really quite know what to do with it. So it's some kind of a situation of that sort. A roaring or snorting serpent monster guards the pearl. And this pearl needs to be found, recovered, and brought back to the heavenly realm from whence our protagonist had come in the first place. But of course the fulfillment of this task is not as easy as it sounds when it's briefly recounted like this, because he undergoes certain deleterious changes once he comes to earth, or to the land of Egypt, as they put it, Egypt being the metaphor for the dark earth, the dark land, and therein, even though he is obviously a spiritual being of great transcendental consciousness, he undergoes a regrettable change, and this change consists in having lost his memory and not being aware of his mission and becoming a subservient, let us say, of the earthly forces to which he has come now. And there are sort of two initial experiences which we may not have discussed yet to any degree earlier that he undergoes. And one of these is that when he gets to the land of the Egyptians, he meets a companion there. And this companion is, well, what should we say, as companions should be? The companion is companionable. And so they get along very well. They have an underlying connection of their nature, because as the hymn which is written in the first person indicates, this companion is of a similar background to our protagonist. He is a prince. He is a child of kings, which of course indicates, let us say symbolically, the spiritual royalty which the esoteric tradition attributes to every human being. You know, the Sufis, which are a mystical bunch of people spread over the Islamic world, have always said that each Sufi and that really the word Sufi originates also in Suf, which means wise. So those people who belong to these groups of wisdom are of a spiritual royalty. They are, by way of their inward rank, really above and superior to everyone else. And it has been observed and heard that when, let's say, in some part of India or in other various parts of the Middle East, when Sufis meet each other, they greet each other with elaborate, almost comical salutations that would appertain to royalty. So when one meets the other, and they are both probably camel drivers, they greet each other. Oh, I'm so happy to see you, Majesty. Oh, great King, so great to see you. And these are all symbolic statements directed toward the recognition of the spiritual royalty of the soul, especially when the soul has awakened to its true nature and is now infused with the light of divinity. And so that is why we have the statement that he meets a young man who is of the same royal lineage as himself. At least that's how it comes out. And they converse and really so seemingly have quite a good time with each other. But around the same time, since he is now completely separated from his original heavenly habitat, he now has to begin to partake in the activities of what they are called the Egyptians, which is really the dwellers in the dark land. And part of this is that he has to partake of their nourishment, their food and their drink. Now, of course, the issue of the food, the drink that we take into our bodies has been of concern in various spiritual traditions. And at least from my point of view, and at this particular time in history, I think it is a concern that should not be very much our concern. Because an awakening, I don't say necessarily awakened, but in an awakening human soul will not be harmed with whatever the body eats. And what we have, of course, is in different parts of the world, we have dietary customs and laws that the culture or sometimes the religious tradition ordains, and then these become very important to people. They become the law of the land. We have it in Orthodox Judaism, we have it in Islam, and I can't really tell you for what reason, but it seems that one of the creatures, edible creatures, let's put it that way, that is most greatly discriminated against is the pig. And so we have that, in Islam, we have that in Judaism, we have that in various ways. Nobody ever really found out why the eating of pork was singled out in this fashion. And I'm not about to tell you either, primarily because I don't know. But I must say that my country, where I come from, on the other hand, and many of the Eastern European countries are really like pigs, and not just as pets, which they make fairly interesting pets. Along with many other animals, my family kept pigs also, and I like to visit the pigs. For one thing, I always felt that's probably just a childish, wild imagination, that pigs had a sense of humor, and that when they looked at you, they were smiling. They put their mouth out like that. And so I used to tell him, well, keep smiling, buddy, because you know where you're going to end up. And I didn't seem to bother them a bit. In any event, where I brought the pigs into this porcine tale, I don't know, but primarily because largely by partaking of the food and the drink of the local people, he loses his connection with the transcendental world, and he has become a victim of a form of amnesia. And he has forgotten why he has come, where he has come from, and many things of that sort, and he is a complete amnesiac. Now, that's more or less where we left off with the story, but then let us say, this obviously can be taken as a symbol that not necessarily because of the physical nourishment that we may put into our bodies, but by way of our presence in this world and our partaking of the activities, of the customs, of the ambience of earthly life, we diminish, sometimes to a very great extent, our connection with the transcendental realm from whence we have come, and the essence of which still dwells with us. And so the earthly life and the involvement in the various activities of earthly life have a tendency to despiritualize us. And that this, of course, is a difficult situation. I have somewhere a quotation by Colin Wilson, who is, in addition to being a great writer, also quite a witty fellow, about what the human being has become. And he really has bad epithets. And among them very prominently figures that we all have become amnesiacs. We have forgotten. What have we forgotten? Well, we have forgotten who we really are. We have forgotten our far memory of the greater and the transcendental life of which we have been the product before we have come to earth. So now what happens? He has come to earth, he has left his heavenly gifts, his beauty as the symbol as the beautiful robes, and that is why the poem is also called the Hymn of the Robe of Glory. He has left all of these behind, and now he is in an alien land. He doesn't know who he is, and he doesn't know what he came here for. Does it sound familiar? I think it should, because it is really the human condition. And that is why we come up with and try to, we might almost say magically, conjure up meanings of various kinds, which are not the true meanings. Because the real meaning of our existence is not to be found in earthly things. And the more we misunderstand that, and we do accept some worldly situations, worldly causes, as being the legitimate purpose or reason of our earthly lives, the worse we will fare. I very well remember the days of Hitler in the German-speaking countries, or for that matter, the words of the Bolsheviks in Soviet Russia and elsewhere. What these unfortunate people have bought into, to use a kind of American commercial phrase, they have bought into a reality which was not really theirs. A reality that was dreamt up in the slums of Vienna by a sort of artistic hobo by the name of Adolf Hitler, for instance. So when we buy into the false realities that are offered to us in this world, and certainly Nazism and communism are not the only ones, because the culture at any given time and any given place is full of the deceptive realities. Why is that so? Well, that's difficult to pinpoint once again, but I would say that the most important reason for that condition is that we have lost touch with the source of authentic reality, and we seek false realities which are offered to us. We all need some kind of meaning, and that is an important psychological fact. The writings of Carl Jung are full of that. But much of the so-called meaning that is being offered to us and that we frequently accept is false meaning. It is counterfeit. It is a substitute. And so that is sort of what happens to him. He lives now in a world of lack of authenticity. Nothing is real. And so when that happens, and I think it happens far more often than we admit to ourselves, because we don't really like to admit to ourselves or to anybody else that we don't have any meaning, that we are leading a meaningless life, and that a lot of our difficulties and our misunderstandings and our activities which turn out to be counterproductive is due precisely to that. And so how will this difficulty now be resolved? And it is resolved once again metaphorically, symbolically, by a letter. His parents in heaven, his father and mother, send him a letter. And as the result of receiving this letter, he recovers his memory and he's able to rise to his task. Let me see if I can extricate from the text some or all of the letter that he has received. Oh, here it is. From thy father, the King of Kings, and from thy mother, the Mistress of the East. She's also called sometimes the Empress of the East. And from thy brother, our next in rank, unto thee, our son in Egypt, greeting. And now comes the essence of the letter. Awake and rise up out of thy sleep, and perceive the words of our letter. Remember that thou art the king's son. Behold whom thou hast served in bondage. Be mindful of the pearl, for whose sake thou hast departed into Egypt. Remember the robe of glory, thy robe of glory. Recall thy splendid mantle, that thou mayest put them on again, and deck thyself with them, and thy name be read in the book of the heroes, and thou become with thy brother our deputy, heir in our kingdom. That is the essence of the letter. And the letter is, the coming of the letter is also described in this beautiful mythological manner, because the letter itself is sort of alive, and it has it flies on the wings of an eagle. And of course, eagles, more probably than others, and various other birds have been regarded in many, many cultures from ancient times on as the messengers of another world, because they really are. I mean, they just come, here they are, you know, they've flown, we don't quite know where, maybe they've come from the Hollywood sign, maybe they've come from Kansas City, which would be a little bit less romantic than the Hollywood sign and things, but here they are, they come from another kind of reality. And so, for which reason bird symbolism is an important one. And where do you find a very good example of it? Is with that the founders of the United States of America have chosen the bald eagle, the great eagle, one of the greatest eagles of the American continent, as the symbolic creature, as well, we might say the heraldic creature of the United States. And so we are commanded and protected by the eagle, and from the symbolism that the eagle carries. Now, that being the case, so this is the letter is a mystical being that has wings like an eagle, and but upon it is written the text or its equivalent that we just read. And so the young man, our protagonist, then says, like a messenger was the letter that the king had sealed with his right hand against the evil ones, the children of Babel and the rebellious demons of Sarbuk. So let's say the demonic element, the dark element, its presence is recognized as a menace. It, namely the letter, rose up in the form of an eagle. There it is. The king of all winged fowl, and flew until it alighted beside me and became holy speech. So even though it is written, it translates itself into speech. So they were way ahead of our electronic devices at that time. So I don't know what you would call it in that sense. At its voice and sound I awoke. So it's the voice, it's the call, it's the vak, as it is called in Sanskrit, that wakes us up. So as its voice and sound I awoke, and I arose from my sleep, took it up, namely the letter, kissed it, broke its seal, and read. Just as was written on my heart were the words of my letter to read. Now, some of these sentences are of very profound significance. So it's important to look them again. What would that mean? Because it at his departure from heaven, he remarks that they wrote something in his heart. And so the letter has the same message that is written on his heart already. And that in itself, I think, is a very important symbol. The various experiences of life, the various ways in which our spiritual mission is called to our attention, these are all related to. They have an inward, invisible, and yet extremely powerful connection with something secret, something mysterious, that at the same time is still tremendously wonderful inside of ourselves. So this is a good thing to remember as a general principle, that the outer and the inner, when properly arranged and properly contemplated, can have a connection with each other. And that connection, to a large extent, in our contemporary language, might be regarded as having to do with meaning. The same meaning, the meaning of our lives, the meaning of our mission in life, the meaning of our relationship with the greater transcendence. This meaning is inside of us, but there are various signs and wonders outside of us that come to us and remind us of that inward presence. So that is really, to a very great extent, the purpose, the deepest of all purposes of the external events of our lives. We do not encounter various circumstances, whatever they may be, without a reason. And the reason is that if we do the work right, this external event or this external object can awaken something tremendously important, something all important within us because of its relationship. So let's say every event of life and every person within those events can be, and really should be, a spiritual memento, something that calls forth to us and says, remember, remember, remember. So when we are really strongly affected, say, by another person or by some event of our lives, what is probably happening is that we have seen and heard the words of the letter. A letter is coming to us, a message is coming to us. And the message is, to a great extent, wake up, and remember who you are. Remember why you have come here. Remember the great and wonderful and valorous deed that we have designed for you to do. So wake up and remember. And that remembering, which is knowledge of a certain kind, is gnosis, is of extremely great importance. I think that the great Plato, who was, of course, revered like a god in human form for a long time, you know that there, in the Renaissance period particularly, there were actually serious discussions in ecclesiastical circles in Rome to declare Plato a saint. And of course, when you had some people there in important positions who were very reverential about the wisdom of the ancient world, and that, of course, was of great importance. But so you need to keep in mind that many, certainly not all, but many of the deeper, more meaningful, and therefore more impressive events of our lives are in the nature of mnemonic devices to make us remember something important. And therefore, cultures have devised various means to try to evoke, invoke, and be in touch with these deeper meanings. But unfortunately, especially in cultures that are strongly extroverted than ours, the outer circumstances, the black land of Egypt, the nourishment that we take into ourselves in the culture as such, not necessarily any culinary nourishment, these things blot out the voice of the letter that says, remember. Remember who you are. Remember why you have come here. Remember what this is all about. You really know. You think you don't know, but you really know. But you have to make the effort to remember. Now, if you ask me what are the precise motions of the psyche or of the body to do that with, I'm going to tell you I don't know. And that will make me an honest man. You see? So, because these things are indeed, as the ancients called them, they are mysteries. And the nature of a mystery is that it is mysterious. And you have to be a mystes, as the Greek word has it, to deal with them and to appreciate them. And what is that? Is someone who veils his eyes from the outer world, so that you're not distracted by the culture, you're not distracted by the television set, you're not distracted by the computer. All of those things go out of the way, and you begin, this must be it. And this much I can say without too much detail, that it can be done. And probably the most important ingredient of that action is to realize that it can be done. To say, yes, I have within me the potential to do that. I can remember. I don't have to remain an amnesiac forever, because there's something important that I need to remember. What is it? But that, of course, is a very individual matter. So now, that being the case, we can proceed perhaps a little bit further. At its so this, like a messenger was the letter, that the king had sealed with his right hand against the evil ones, and so forth. At its voice and sound I awoke and arose from my sleep, took up the letter, kissed it, broke its seal, and read. Just as was, now this is probably one of the most important sentences in this scripture, or perhaps in any place. Just as was written on my heart were the words of my letter. So this correspondence between the message that is already inside of us, on the one hand, and the external items that come to us in order to make us remember. This relationship is, well, you can call it all kinds of things, but this is gnosis, this is enlightenment, when the inward reality is awakened and moves toward the greater reality, when they come together. That is the spiritual alchemy. That is the archetype of the conjunctio, when that which comes to us and that which is already within us are able to conjoin and be one. And I can testify to it with just small experiences of my own, that is possible. That is more than possible, it is probable, and the main requisite for it is acceptance. If we accept that something of this sort is trying to take place, somebody somewhere, some ineffable greatness is calling out to me, it says, awake and arise from your sleep. You are here for a purpose. Awaken, look for the purpose and bring that purpose together with the greater purpose that is coming toward you, and then you will have fulfilled the purpose of your life. As I think it was Carl Jung who wrote in one of his books that most people ask the wrong question. They ask the question, what is the meaning of life? He says, that's the wrong question. The real question is, what is the meaning of my life? But somehow to ask that question, and even more to answer it, is a pretty big job. And so we try to avoid it in various ways. But in any event, here we can see that something came, or a message. It was like a messenger. So that means that the message itself had a personality. The message itself was like a being. This is, of course, how the ancients, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans, and so forth, looked at the communications of the gods. The very communication itself comes like a being. And you know how the let's say the monotheistic religions have inherited that. Maybe it has something to do with today's festival by way of the teaching about the angels. Because what is angelos? Angelos in Greek means a messenger. And the angels were the messengers. Now, you don't have to believe in angels. None of these things are to be believed in, but they are to be accepted and dealt with when they come and when they happen. And so maybe we can call out in our alienation and in our amnesia to the messengers, to Michael and Gabriel and Raphael and Uriel, because you know those names they were not just cooked up by somebody who didn't have anything better to do, but interestingly enough, the names of transcendental beings, such as angels or so, those names are very important. And the names have been discovered, the names have been found. And when we call out those names, then very often the great beings who are thus named make their appearance. So this is really quite important. So what else did he remember? I remembered that I was a son of kings. So I mentioned that before, the spiritual royalty. You know, the world of heaven is not a republic. Okay? Do I need to say more? Well, remember the coronation a little while ago. What it means is that there is a principle of transcendental royalty, a principle of transcendental nobility that one needs to affinitize oneself to, and then one can, let's say, be close to, and I remembered the pearl, now, for which I had been sent down to Egypt. And I began to enchant the terrible and snorting serpent. Here is that snorting serpent again. I will not comment on that part more. I think what he tried to indicate here, that while ordinary snakes that you may meet in the Hollywood Hills or so, and I assure you there are many of them there. By the time it gets warm, wow! And many of them have those little tails that, but others are just perfectly harmless. In any event, he awakened the serpent. I charmed it to sleep by naming over it my father's name, the name of our next in rank, who is his spiritual brother, and that of my mother, the Empress of the East. So what did he do? I think I very briefly mentioned this at the beginning of our series, that one would expect from the traditions of our legendary, like the Grail legend and King Arthur and all of these things, that he would turn into a knight in shining armor and go down there and kill the snake and then take the pearl. Instead of that, what does he do? He enchants. And what is enchantment? Enchantment is magic. You know, the French are wise only in some respects. Don't give them too much credit. But the French are wise when the highest compliment that they can give you when they meet you, they will say, enchanté. I am enchanted. Because if and when in those few instances when that's really true, then something very, very wonderful and very, very fine has happened. You will remember even just maybe the 1 or 2 or 3 instances in your life when, as a result of an encounter with a visible human or with an invisible spirit, you were enchanted. You will never forget it. So this is the magic that the human is capable of expressing, because we are, once again, to use the French au fond, in the background of our nature, we are magicians, we are enchanters, we are natural-born shamans, to go back to the origins, and as such, we can do those things. But in order to do them, we have to first realize that we can do them, and then we can go ahead and do them. So I charmed it to sleep by naming over him the parents of his celestial parents' name, and I seized the pearl. and turned to repair home to my father. The filthy, it actually says there, namely of the locals, their filthy and impure garment I put off, and left it behind in their land, and directed my way that I might come to the light of our homeland, the East. My letter which had awakened me, I found before me on my way. So here is again the letter with the wings. This would be a wonderful theme for a fantasy or for a fantastic fantasy film. I found before me on my way, and as it had awakened me with its voice, so it guided me with its light that shone before me, and with its voice it encouraged my fear, and with its love it drew me on, and I went forth. So he's guided by this, the mysterious voice of the letter. And now he gets back some of his wonderful things that he had to leave behind. My robe of glory, here it's actually called the robe of glory, which I had put off, and my mantle which went over it, my parents sent to meet me by their treasurers who were entrusted therewith. Its splendor I had forgotten, having left it as a child in my father's house. As I now beheld the robe, it seemed to me suddenly to become a mirror image of myself, that we were two in separateness and yet again one in the sameness of our forms. So here again we are dealing with magic, and this is the magic of his mystical robe. I saw also quiver all over it, again all over his glorious robe. I saw also quiver all over it the movements of the Gnosis. I saw that it was about to speak, and perceived the sound of its songs, which it murmured on its way down. And this is now in quotation marks. I am the one that acted in the acts of him for whom I was brought up in my father's house, and I perceived in myself how my stature grew in accordance with its labors. So here there is a subtle sort of mystical difference between something that is inside of him, inside of himself, and the robe. And this all really has to do with the higher, the transcendental, the magical nature, of the higher self. And why is it? If you look at some of the Hermetic writings, for instance, Poimandres particularly, you will come across instances where a devotee who knows how to do these things is doing his magic. He's invoking the transcendental self. And this transcendental self very often first appears as a garment. And the garment is one that he can put on. When he puts on the robe, when he puts on the mystical garment, then the transcendental spirit has entered him. This is the magic of being robed in a transcendental fashion. And again, these things are not mere figures of speech. They are not mere descriptions of the imagination. This sort of thing can happen, and does happen under the proper circumstances. Its splendor, speaking of the robe, I had forgotten, having left it as a child in my father's house. But now it seemed to me, I now beheld the robe. It seemed to me suddenly to become a mirror image of myself. I already read that, I think. And myself I saw entire in it. And it entire I saw in myself. That we were two in separateness, and yet again one in the sameness of our forms. And the image of the King of Kings, the highest power of the fullness of the pleroma, was depicted all over it. I saw also quiver all over it, the movements of the Gnosis. I saw that it was about to speak, and perceived the sound of its songs, which it murmured on its way down. I am that acted in the acts of him for whom I was brought up in my father's house, and I perceived in myself how my stature grew in accordance with his labors. And that is a quotation. And with its regal movements, this is the robe, the magical robe. And with its regal movements, it pours itself wholly out to me. And from the hands of its bringers, hastens that I may take it. And me that I take it. And me to my love urged on to run towards it and receive it. So what you have here is this magical robe, which has his own form, and the robe is flying toward him, and he is flying toward the robe. And then when they come together, when they embrace, as it were, then he and the magical robe are one. And with its regal movements it pours itself wholly out to me, and from the hands of its bringers hastens that I may take it, and me to my, I take it. And me to my love urged on to run towards it and to receive it. And I stretched towards it and took it, and decked myself with the beauty of its colors. And I cast the royal mantle about my entire self. Clothed therein, I ascended to the gate of salutation and adoration. These are also the gates of the highest heavenly regions. I bowed my head and adored the splendor of my Father, who had sent it to me, whose commands I had fulfilled, and he too had done what he promised. He received me joyfully, and I was with him in his kingdom, and all his servants praised him with organ voice, that he had promised that I should journey to the court of the King of Kings. Now it's an authority even higher than that of his fathers, and having brought my pearl, should appear together with him. And that is really, at least in this particular translation, the end. So we can see here, and that it was the poem was not named without very good reason by some of the most insightful translators, like G.R.S. Mead. Was not named the hymn of the robe of glory, because the robe which he has to leave behind, and which he reassumes then when he comes to the gate of the heavenly kingdom, this is something extremely important. So there is a deific portion of ourselves, which here masquerades as a robe. because it's something that fits him entirely, as he says at one point. There is almost like an other part of ourselves which has been left in heaven. But when the great task has been accomplished, then the two unite once again. It's the angelic self. It's the HGA, as the magicians, the holy guardian angel, as they call it. So there is, you might say, there is an entire self of us, which when we go forth into outer manifestation is left in the transcendental worlds. But there will be a time, and indeed we are assured that there will be such a time, especially if we employ ourselves powerfully enough, when it will come to us and we will come to it, and when we once again will become one. So it's very, very, it's a very, very wonderful and important mystical treatise. So why did the old-timers, whether it was St. Thomas or anybody else, it appears, according to local traditions in India, that St. Thomas the Apostle had really gone to India, and that he died in the vicinity of Madras, and that he was buried in a mountain which is, you can see it, so I'm told, I never went there, from the Theosophical Society's headquarters, and it's called St. Thomas Mountain. And that's, in it is a cave where he was buried. Now, however, unfortunately, if you go there, I don't think you are going to find old Tom there in the cave, because as the Archbishop of the St. Thomas Christians told us when we were in Chicago some years ago, that there was a request from the Patriarch of the Syrian Orthodox Church back in the Middle East to bring the remains of St. Thomas back there from India. And they did do that. So he says, we know all about it. He also said some other interesting things. Was a wonderful old gentleman, you know. And he was, again, he wasn't a plaster saint, because one of the times that Roberta will remember, as he had the greatest conversations with us when we were walking on the corridor in that hotel in Chicago where the Parliament of the World Religions was held, and we were accompanying him to the elevator. And so he was telling us wonderful things about St. Thomas and everything else. Then we came to the elevator and he said, well, friends, I'm going to have to get in the elevator. I need to go to another story, because there's a party there that I want to attend. So bye-bye. He got in, yeah. Great gentleman. In any event, let's say from all of the traditions there are very alive, and so I think it's very likely that Didymus Judas Thomas the twin had actually been to India, and if he has, then who says that he may not have written the Acts of Thomas, including the beautiful lyrical story which we have been occupying ourselves with. And now let's say at the end of our maybe all too long treatment of the subject this month, let's try to maybe draw some conclusions which one can only draw at the end. And I think one of these is that we are all messengers, that we all are here for a purpose. Or you say, yeah, well, great, so what is it? How come I don't know about it? Well, you don't know about it because you haven't gotten to the point where such knowledge becomes available to you. But on the other hand, it is available, and it can become available personally, and what you primarily need to do is strive for it. So I would suggest, if that is not too highfalutin a suggestion, that when we now have finished our dealing with this particular mystical poem, that we keep in mind that perhaps, and maybe more than perhaps, maybe in truth, in very truth, we are also here for a purpose. And that purpose is not the any of the purposes that are presented to us by the external world. They are all disguises. They are all will-o'-the-wisps that are apt to draw us away from the real purpose. And to discover the real purpose, in various cultures, various practices have been established because people wanted to discover them. People wanted to discover the purpose. People wanted to find the pearl and to take it back where it belongs. And they have striven for that, and they have suffered for it, and they have become forgetful, but they did wake up because we all have a connection. We all have a resource. We all have a mysterious, well, it's not it is not a telephone, it is not a computer, but we have a mysterious, magical instrument inside of us. And this instrument keeps saying, you are here for a purpose. Awaken, awaken, arise. And if you do that, if you awaken, you will have the guidance, you will have the help to discover something very, very important. Now, it would do no good to start interpreting what the pearl is. But let us say, we Gnostics have been accused since the 2nd and the 3rd centuries of being world haters who don't like anything in this world, or don't value anything in this world. You can be accused of all kinds of things, and I wouldn't want to trouble you even with just a portion of things that I have been accused of in my life. And there are only two reactions that you can have to them. You can either laugh or you can cry. But that's the way the world is. The world will accuse you of all kinds of things. But we, in other words, we do have the calling to discover something. Where do we discover it? It cannot really be told. But as Carl Jung, I think, was absolutely right when he said that everything that happens of a spiritual nature occurs by way of and within the psyche. So where it happens is in our soul. And this is very, very important. So first of all, one of the first steps toward gnosis are in the nature of recognizing that we not only have a soul, but that we are a soul. And if we recognize that and act upon it, then all kinds of great and wonderful things can happen. But this is one of the great hiatuses, one of the great things that has been made missing in our culture, is precisely the awareness that not only that, but you can put it that we have a soul, but that we are a soul. I'm not going to go into details, but some of the great disputes that are going on now and that people are arguing and fighting and cussing over can be easily resolved if they come to recognize that that's what they are. You know, it is a great and a wondrous thing to be a soul. And that wonder increases when you come to any degree of realization of that presence. And that presence is the presence is the pearl within you, is the treasure that you have found. When you come to this earth and find something marvelous, something astonishingly important, tremendously meaningful, and salvific, you have found the pearl. You have found the pearl. And no doubt other names could be given to it. No matter, it can be circumambulated in various ways. But there is something to be found here. And I am recalling, but I'm trying not to recall something that was part of my little spiel last night in connection with Blavatsky's work, that a soul being, a spiritual transcendence is there as an original birthright in the human being, coming forth from the eternal, coming forth from the father and the mother that he speaks of here, coming forth from that incredible realm of luminous transcendence. We carry it with us and we find it. And we liberate it from the serpents of the world, which are coiled around it and which snort and roar at us as we come. It can be done. Look at the lives of the saints. Look at the lives of great spiritual masters. Look at the Buddhas. Look at the Dalai Lamas and so forth. These are all people who have done that, and often at very great sacrifices. But in these stories there is a promise. And the promise could be very briefly stated. As they have done, so we can do. Because we have within us the same deific potential, the same calling, the letter that flies on the wings of the eagle is right here above us. All we have to do is reach up and touch it. And when we do, we are reminded of who we are. We are awakened from our slumber, and our journey back to our true selfhood, to the great self, to the heavenly beings which we have all along been, but which has been obscured, becomes possible. And we can shed the lowly veils of material existence, and we can reassume our full glory of the robe of heaven, which we'll have left behind, but which, with the promise of the great ones, we shall assuredly receive again. And won't that be the greatest, the most marvelous, the most desirable, the most awakening, the most magical moment that we could have ever even imagined? Yes, indeed, it will. It has happened to others. It can happen to us. God help us that it will happen to all of us. Thank you very much.